Hey, thanks so much, AJ. Appreciate you for having us on the program. This is such a awesome topic for today because it's something that I'm in the trenches with literally day in, day out, like you said. And it's interesting because doctors go to school to cut teeth and do all the amazing things that they do, but no one really teaches them anything about business or how to get into ownership or how to own and run a practice successfully. Yet there's so many that do it. Gosh, I think back in 2013 or 14, I heard a statistic that over 80% of the dentists will own a practice at some point in their career. And I think that's amazing because it just shows the entrepreneur spirit of this industry, these dentists out there that are looking to better themselves and really take advantage of what ownership has for them. And I know you guys get a chance to help them manage that money throughout their career, and that's super important. But that's what this is all about, right? Having better autonomy for yourself and building incredible wealth. But today, let's just start from the beginning. And the topic today is buy or build. Which one's the right thing to do for you? And I think this is a topic that honestly I get asked every single day. We help doctors grow. We help doctors get into ownership. We also help doctors manage those practices post ownership. But the question really is should I start and buy? And I think there's different ways to look at it. We're going to go through some pros and cons and just kind of first few steps of both routes. But before I get into any of that, let's just touch on who I am and why you might want to consider listening to me today. I'm the co-founder of Next Level Consultants. I have a partner, Paula Quinn, who helps me run the organization. We're about a 6-7-year-old company now. And we've helped hundreds and hundreds of doctors either get into ownership and also grow and maintain practices post-ownership. So also the host of Startup Unscripted and Dental Acquisition Unscripted. So 2 different podcasts, but we did just consolidate those 2 podcasts into one. And now it's called simply Dental Unscripted. So I'll give you a QR code at the end of this presentation and you guys can scan that and start listening to some incredible content. We've been publishing stuff for the last 5-6 years now, all on this exact topic, startup or buy. So if you got a little flavor of this content today, there's literally 5 years worth of content on that podcast. Like I said, we've helped lots of doctors over the years. We've saved folks tons of money. By a rep, we typically save about $100 to $120 some $1,000 per transition. And startups, it's a big project. Construction cost is crazy and always is crazy. It's always going to be the meat of your total loan or total project cost. And we help navigate all of that. And we, on average, save folks about 50 grand. So a little bit about Next Level. Again, nationwide, over 60 active clients. We have all kinds of services, practice management, which is once you become owner, that's full-blown practice management and consulting of 7 coaches that do that. I am the primary startup coach today, buyer representation. So I would represent you in buying a practice. Don't mistake that for a practice broker who represents the practices. Those folks represent the sellers. This product or service that I help doctors with is me representing you and being across the table from those practice brokers. Somebody should be on your side, and I would love to do that for you. We also have a hygiene growth program, which is super popular. Once you get into ownership and you're trying to figure out how to boost that hygiene program, have that. Front office training programs. And then something that's been going really well for us over the last 3 years is a billing and credentialing department. We have 4 or 5 billers now, and we do remote billing and fee negotiation. So it's just kind of a side project program that a lot of our clients needed. So we just tacked that on our main services. So enough about us and enough about me. What does it take to be an owner? I think you really need to think about this, folks, because it really does take different things to do startup or acquisition, but just a general kind of conversation about what does it take to be an owner. I have this conversation all the time, and I got to be honest with you. Sometimes I think that the folks on the other end of the phone when I'm interviewing dentists to potentially be clients of ours, I literally think maybe this person shouldn't be an owner. Maybe they should just stay as an associate, not take on any of the stresses of managing team and profitability and just the everyday struggles of what ownership has to that gives. I own my own business. AJ and the guys, they run their own, and they know what it's like to manage people and deal with all of the things that it takes to do that. So I think anytime we have this discussion about buy or start, I think we need this conversation really should start with, is ownership right for you? And these are some of the qualities that I think are very important before you get into any business. Vision is not one of those things that you just glaze over. You have to have a vision for where you're going, your goals for the future, planning, like AJ and his team do. You have to see where you're trying to go, because if you don't see it, then you can't accomplish it. So vision is very important. Naturally, an entrepreneur spirit. Don't do this as a hobby. If you have a desire or an entrepreneur spirit, ownership's right for you. Leadership qualities. You don't have to be the best leader. You don't have to be some kind of Tony Robbins and just be incredible right from day one. I hear that a lot of folks don't move forward with ownership because they're nervous about their leadership attributes. But if you have a desire to be a better, good leader, and you have some qualities that you can tap into and grow those, you're going to be fine, and you'll be a great leader. You, of course, won't be one right out of the gate, and that's okay. But if you have the desire to be a good leader and you have some of those qualities, it's a very important thing. I think confidence in clinical is super important. Sometimes I get clients that right out of school where they don't know their hand speed, they don't know what kind of production and clinical they are comfortable with. You have a general sense of what you're good with, but remember, now this is a business. And so if you're buying a practice, most important, this is a really important bullet point for those that are thinking buy, because a lot of the due diligence in buying a practice, you have to know what you can do, and then you compare that to what you're buying. And I know that sounds like obvious, but folks, it's actually not. Like, a lot of our due diligence is really focusing on that. What could you bring new to the office to grow? And also, what's your hand speed compared to the seller? Because if you buy a business and it's producing at a level, you got to match that level or be better at it. And if you can't, then the business is naturally going to dip. And that is actually one of the pros and cons of a startup versus a buy. And we're going to get into that. But startups a little less stress in that department. So having the confidence that to be able to handle any situation that the practice might throw at you is key. Having cash in the bank. I'm an ex-banker. I'm sure AJ and their team will talk to you about this as you guys plan your future for financial planning. You got to have some cash. Anytime you go into business, whether you're buying FedEx franchise or going a coffee shop or a dental office, doesn't matter. Having cash in the bank is really good for you, because the bank is going to give you a great deal. They're going to give you a lot of cash to buy a business, but you got to be solid at home. And if you're not solid at home, you're not going to be solid at work. And there's nothing worse than being a business owner and being scared and making bad business decisions if you don't have some of that cash in the bank.
Michael, I was going to say, if I jump in on a couple things here.
I would love to.
So listen, Michael's checking the boxes here, and we have run about 75 401k plans around the country. And for our practice owners, do not underestimate the fact that you will be a manager of your business. And so if it's a small practice, 5, 8, 10 people, you are going to hire, fire, train, and manage those employees. If you do not know how to do that, then you need to learn how to do that. And if you don't want to learn how to do that, then I would throw a little caution to the wind. The second thing is everything that he's mentioning, the beauty of your business, and it's just like mine. There's something you don't like or don't want to do, a lot of it can be delegated. You just have to understand there's a price for that delegation. And if that's really a weak point, or maybe you want to bring a bad to the bone office manager in, right? That's going to handle those things and compensate them accordingly. Whatever it is, there's going to be an option there. On the financing piece, Michael, or do you want me to wait on this and from a later
No,
standpoint? Or
we could hit it right now because I don't think I hit too much of lending in this presentation. Yeah.
So first off, Virtus is not a bank, all right? But what we'll go out and do is when you say, hey, AJ or Tyler, you can buy in a practice, you will have banks lining up at your doorstep. They will salivate at doing a deal with you. Why? Because your business doesn't fail. Everyone knows this, 99.6% success rate. So what does that mean? You go out and you get 3 quotes from 3 different banks and you compare the options, not with all the ancillary services they're offering, but the pure option from a financing standpoint. The second thing with what Michael's talking about, cash in the bank, typically 7 to 10% of the purchase price. So if you're going to buy $1 million practice, you better have $70 to $100,000 in the bank. This is not your Roth IRA. This is not your 401k. This is cash either in the bank or a taxable investment account. So you really need to understand this as you're coming out of school. A lot of the conversations I have with our clients are, what do we need to prioritize now? And you have all these things you want to do because you've been in school forever. You see all your friends doing this thing. Your dad's telling you to do something. Your brother's telling you, your sister, everyone. Listen, if you're going to buy a practice out of school, every dollar should go towards getting ready for that practice purchase. We will figure out the retirement planning later. I can, with a fair degree of certainty, assure you that missing 2 years of a Roth, backdoor Roth or direct Roth or whatever is not going to make or break your financial plan. Your practice will far outweigh any 2 years of your Roth contributions we're missing. I don't want to go on a tangent on that, Michael, but that's huge with these. Is of what do you prioritize based on the first thing Michael has there is your vision coming out of school. We need to move around the priorities to match that. So I'll let you take it back over.
I love that. That's good stuff. And I think that's on point when I get into the same conversation, AJ, about, well, retirement, and I don't want to take it out of retirement, or I don't want to whatever. They're really worried about their retirement. I get those folks, right? And I think about owning a business and the growth and all of the benefits that comes with it far exceeds what a max contribution could be to your some kind of 401k or whatnot. So just imagine that you're investing in your future and you're betting on yourself versus AJ putting your money in Coca-Cola, which you might get great returns there, but you'll never get the returns that you might see as owning your own business and killing it. So I love this conversation. Just to kind of end cap to this, of course, willingness to work hard. I will tell you, I never worked harder until I owned my business, and I worked hard when I worked for the bank that I used to work for. So hard work, it takes a lot of hard work on the front end, and you do all the right things, it's better. Desire to run a business, 100%. Comfortable with being uncomfortable is one of my most favorite sayings, because everything about ownership is uncomfortable because you've never done it before. So just get comfortable with being uncomfortable and having weird conversations with employees. And here's the last thing I'll say about that, and that is, you don't have to know everything. A lot of my younger kind of docs that out of school, and you guys didn't have any business training, you didn't have any leadership training, you know that. And so you're not supposed to know all the answers as a business owner. And a lot of folks kind of act like they do, and that puts them in bad spots. It's okay to identify weaknesses and build on those and learn on those. Employee comes at you with some kind of HR question. It's okay to say, I don't know, let me connect with AJ or my attorney or Michael at Next Level, and we'll walk you through that, right? It's okay to say you don't know. So just get comfortable being uncomfortable. Last thing is grit, right? Like, there's going to be down months and there's going to be up months, and the up months are fun with the bank account, but then you'll hit some bad months. You'll be like, oh my gosh, it's going the other way. That's called grit, and it takes a lot of grit to own any company. Any last kind of comments on that, AJ, before I kind of start off or buy the options?
I underestimate as a business owner the mental stress as well. Planning, having a vision, you got to trust the plan and what you're doing, that it's going to work, but you're going to have the days that you're going to doubt yourself. And that's okay. You got to have a trusted partner that you can talk to that's going to reassure you, whoever that might be. Don't underestimate that. The reward is there for sure. Yeah,
not
easy.
You don't talk about this much in this presentation, but the partners that you allow on your team, like AJ, like me, like professionals that you decide that you want to bring into your network, like on them, because we've done it hundreds of times, and you're going to need a lot of really smart people around you, experienced people around you to do this. So EJ said you're going to have to quote people out to find the right people and ask friends for referrals. But once someone's on your team, use them, and it's really important. All right, so options. So what options do you have? Options do you have to get into ownership, startup or buy? So let's startup first. So the startup is going to be somewhere between 9 to 18 months journey. Could be even longer if you're looking at a development deal. The moment a client hires me today to the time we open, it can be as quick as 9 months, and it could be as long as 2 years, quite frankly. So it is a long journey, and there's a lot of things to work on much quicker. But the great thing about startups, and again, we'll get into some pros and cons, but it's a waterfall. You start the process and use ownership at the end of it. Where a lot of folks are out there looking at practices and they don't know when they're going to get into ownership because the right practice has shown itself. And sometimes folks are a little picky on what they want. And so no really timeline on buying a practice because you just don't know. Startup, it's waterfall. You start the process and it works its way through. So phase one of a startup is the planning and preparation stage. Again, clear vision, business plan, budgeting, demographics, and lending. So I always say, like, time that you put into the first step pays dividends. A lot of folks that I talked to that didn't hire a consultant just kind of then started interviewing a bunch of vendors, and pretty soon, not really the practice they thought it was going to be. And I think that's because there's a lack of preparation, potentially maybe not having a consultant on your side. You don't have to have a consultant, but I think consultants slow the process down just a little bit to be super clear about what we're trying to do for you, because every startup has a different vision and a different business plan. And the more you get granular on that, the easier it is to implement that later. It's like preparation. You guys are all in school. It's like prepping for a course or a test. The more prep you put in, the better the outcome. It's the same thing, but too many people kind of miss that step. Once you kind of got solidified, lending, demographics, all the budgeting, all the things, that's when you want to start the location search. The location search is so important because, and probably heard this in other seminars, webinars, whatever, location. So location is so key with a startup. You want to go where everybody's already at. And my big struggle with my clients is, hey, why are we trying to do a startup where everybody already is at? Like, I know you want to live in the hottest market, and hottest figuratively. You want to be this far from the city, and it's a lifestyle conversation, and I get that. But if you plant somewhere where there's a lot of other people, obviously there's a lot more competition, it's going to be a little slower growth. You go into like the fringe areas, the secondary markets, the tertiary markets, you're going to find a lot more success. Every time that I've helped $1 million startup, it's been someone that wanted and was willing to go to a fringe. It's not saying you can't do it. It's impossible to do that in a more competitive market. I'm just saying it's harder. It takes more effort, more marketing, more dollars. So think about that. And then we get into the lease negotiation once we find that spot. So that kind of sums up the phase one of a startup. The second phase of a startup is design and project management. So now that we have that space, we got to start planning it, we got to start permitting it, we got to start getting equipment and construction bids, and we got to building it out and executing. So that stage is what everybody thinks about as far as a startup goes, is that phase two. Again, phase one's very important. The phase two is like the implementation. So getting everybody on the team, making sure our budgets are dialed in, our equipment is selected, and we don't get too crazy in that department. Cash flow is king. And a lot of folks just kind of with the way the vendors take you, and you can get into some trouble there. Remember, you're a startup. You can't have all the nice stuff, right? Did you buy the $1 million+ house right out of school, or did you buy your first house like all of us do, appropriate for your income? It's the same exact thing. So again, budgeting drives all of this, vision drives all of this, but that second phase is all about project management. Phase 3 now, so imagine we have prepared it, we've found a space, we've started building it out, we got all of our budget data, and we got everybody on the team. Now we got to start thinking, how are we going to start getting patients? So now that the project's it's on its way and we've got a tentative opening date, we need to quickly pivot to how are we going to get patients to call, because you could have a beautiful office at the finish line of that 9 to 18 months, but if no patients are coming in, you're in trouble. And so marketing is so key. Focus a lot on the internal and external. Everybody naturally thinks about that external marketing. So that's pay-per-click and mailers and maybe social media and all the things. There's also the internal marketing part. Some might call that grassroots marketing, where you're pounding the pavement, you're shaking hands, kissing babies, you're doing your partnerships with the jiu-jitsu classes. AJ and I are talking. We got the little ones at home. And you got to think about that, right? Like, so we're dads. We go to these classes. I got volleyball practice tonight. Going to be there. As a dentist, not going to be hanging out. I guarantee no one's going to be hanging out with a little booth and some cute things to give the kids to play with, whatever, after practice. But gosh, that would be so easy to pick up business, right? Might not work for a general dentist, might work for a pediatric dentist or an ortho. But there's a lot of things like that GPs and other specialists can do to get in front of people to start really driving that brand and that demand to your practice. So marketing, I could literally have an entire presentation on marketing, but that is so key, of course, for a startup, right? We get patients to start calling. So now think about it. Okay, so building it, we're now marketing it. Why are we marketing it? To get patients to call. So now we need to start thinking about how we're going to handle the calls, right? So at some point, you're going to have to suggest about 45 days, start placing ads to find your team. So you got to start placing ads and getting a team to handle the calls and start worrying about how we're going to handle the patient. So interview and onboard your team, so key. I will tell you right now, the difference between someone breaking even, most of our clients break even about 4 to 6 months of a startup, is because of phase 3, marketing and how you manage your team and how much you commit to your team as far as hours, benefits, and all the things. So I think about a startup, you're not going to have a ton of patients. Just won't, no matter how hard you hit ground running. I always tell my clients, even if you literally hit a home run and got 40 new patients your first month, and you're only open 12 days a month, that's like 3 patients a day. Like nothing, right? And that's you nailing it, crushing it, right? So it really doesn't get crazy till like months from that first day, because hopefully on those 30 to 40 new patients you got on day 1, that you reappoint them, and then you have all those patients plus the new patients in month 6. So now you're looking at like 6 patients a day. Still not crushing it, but you can kind of tell it's a slow burn the first 6 months. And how you hire, right, is only offering so many days a week with not getting too crazy. If you're like, well, Mike, how does the phones get covered and all that? We've got strategies around all that. But the point is to keep your overhead as low as humanly possible. And AJ, what's your biggest expense in any business, especially in dental?
Labor.
Labor. And it is 3 times bigger than any other expense. So I always get the call, Mike, I got this amazing front office person. I don't know anything about billing or anything. And if I just had her, we're going to crush. Well, is she bringing like a patients with her? Because we can't afford her, right? So it's having that conversation. We literally alligator roll with our clients on this topic, and we're always right. They just don't know what they're getting into, and it's a toughie. All right, so now we've planned it, we've built it, we've marketed it. Now we've filled our roster. Now we're going to get into phase 4, which is really operation excellence and grand opening. So it's now picking softwares and getting the systems going and all SOPs going, patient intakes, workflow, all of that when it comes to the patients, right? All that matters. And then, of course, fine tuning your team, training, performance reviews with your team. So it's all the stuff that every practice owner wrestles with. But I will say in phase 4, especially with a startup, it's setting it up right. So many offices we come into that we're not startup or acquisition coaches, but we're like practice management coaches. And there is so much dysfunction in a lot of offices, especially at the front, that it's hard to unwind some of the stuff that's there. And so the beautiful thing about startups is you get to lay it down the right way. Now, that can be challenging because imagine hiring a front office gal who's come from Comfort Dental. I'm just throwing out a DSO, right? And that's the way Comfort does. That's not really the way you want to do it, right? And then you got a dental assistant that has their experience, and you have your experience, and everybody's got their experience, and that team is creating the SOP. Well, quickly you can get out of whack there, right? And so again, one of the benefits of having someone like us on your team, we have the benefit of working with over 100 doctors a year and looking at what's best practices and setting you up the right way. So on that, AJ, just to kind of up startups before
I ask you a couple questions. So
please.
Can you talk a little bit on phase 1 in regards to demographics and the approach to an area that can support the inflow?
Question volley, because you've got GPs and PEDOs and perios and all that, right? But cut up my answer into halves here. GPs, it's simple. You got to think about that vision and business plan. I have clients that are okay with Medicaid, and I've got some clients that want to just go after implants. So that business plan really does drive what we're looking for in a location, right? So my first thing is like, how many others in the area are doing what I'm trying to do? And the general ratio, there's going to be a lot of maybe pushback on this with real estate people, but I like greater than 4,000 for a GP in an area. There's 4,000 people like me and AJ out in the street, right? I want one dentist for that. That would be a nice start. My $1 million startups are chasing 6,000 to 8,000 people per. So that's a high demand. 4,000 is great. I help people do 2,000. I'm getting a little nervous below 2,000, quite frankly. So 2,000 in my mind is very competitive. Sweet, anything greater than 4 is like a home run, in my opinion. Now, if we're talking specialists, I think you double those numbers. Okay. You also got to think about your referral sources. There are a lot of GPs in this area that are going to refer in. You think about your also double and maybe even more, because again, you go to a pediatric clinic and there are little kids everywhere. It's like a freaking gymnasium, right? And playground, and high volume, and the value per patient is half. So for a GP, you're looking at like 800 for me and AJ to walk into your office. That's our value to you as an owner. For pediatrics, it's half that, 400, because all the fees are a lot less. So you just need a lot more volume. And again, depending on or all PPO or service, all that good stuff. So I don't know if I answer your question, AJ, but like,
or a great answer. Yeah, and answer, and then I'll give one comment on everything you just said, especially in phase 1 and 2. And listen, this has nothing to do with me being a financial advisor. This is just me being in business. You all need to understand this. When you go out on your own into business, if your family and friends are going to come out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden you're going to find everyone's an expert, everyone's here to help you, and you need to put these key players around you. Okay, you need to remember that you are the CEO of this business, and a CEO of a company does not hire their family and friends. Okay, Johnson said the key to his success in business is he does not hire his family. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So you need to understand that and be able to have that conversation. Just because someone's got a friend of a friend, they don't know anything about dentistry, Okay, oh, look, but your job is to go out and interview 2 or 3 people. You need to understand that if you can't have that hard conversation as a business owner, it's not that hard. You just need to be able to tell someone, hey, thank you very much, but I'm not interested at this time. You really need to reevaluate what you're doing. So just
Yeah.
my commentary there.
I
Go
love
ahead.
that. I think those are great tips. And I will also say, like podcasts, like competitors of mine, a lot of other dentists out there, Facebook groups, and don't listen to everything you hear. Look, I think my podcast is great. I think we talk very generically, but of course, sometimes we talking about stuff just like today, and it's hard to present on a topic and stay so high level. You get granular. When you get granular, don't take it for your word or your Bible. It could be totally different situation for your market, your demographics, your family situation. So again, this is why you need folks like me and AJ and others on your team, because then we can advise you for your situation. And I always say, like there's a lot of different business plans out there. You go to Nordstrom, fantastic business. Which company makes more money? And the simple answer is Walmart. They crush. And there's nothing wrong with a Walmart business, if that's the plan. So again, there's a lot of out there. Let's cut all insurances, go fee for service as a startup. Well, that might not be a great idea for you. Or, oh, you should go and lease 3,500 square feet. Well, that's pretty big. You're talking to someone that went to a 10,000 to 1 ratio. They're giving you advice. You're going into an area, it's 2,000 to 1. Do not do 3,500 square foot. You're going to get into big trouble. So everybody is in a different situation. You need to hire people to think as a fiduciary, like AJ and I are, so that we can advise you on your situation. And I can't say that enough, quite frankly. So that goes for all this. But let's pivot now to acquisition. Now you can see the timeline, 2 to 4 months, and that's pretty true. Of course, I have acquisitions that's gone longer, but I'd say the atypical deal, a doctor sends it to me. They're in the middle of negotiation. They realize they're over their skis a bit. So they bring me in, we close in 2 months. Like that's the fastest probably. It's fine, atypical. I'm working a deal right now. It's like 8-9 months because we're waiting, like you guys, for someone to graduate. They're a specialist and got to get all of the board certified and all that before they can take ownership. So there's situations. So you're going to see that acquisitions are kind of similar, but different in a lot of ways. But all this happens in 2 to 4 months versus what I said before, 9 to 18 months. You got plenty of time to work through all those mechanics. So this is kind of fast and furious type situation. When you're buying, phase one is very simple also. What's your vision for what kind of practice you want to buy? Again, the clinical evaluation is very important. So this is the planning and preparation stage. You really want to look at all of the things that practice that you're looking at, evaluating, fits you. So you're looking at the practice, you're seeing what your vision would be for that practice, clinical part of it, which is something AJ and I can't do for you. You have to know if you can handle the clinical part. I can't do that for you. I'm not a dentist. I don't know what you're able to do. And I do push that responsibility onto my clients. It's something I can't help you with, but I can help you with the budgeting, the demographics, the lending, the LOI. And so your vendors can only do, or your professionals can only do so much. You got to take responsibility for that clinical part. Plays a very little role in acquiring a practice. You guys might be surprised by that. Where startup is very key. You heard me talk a lot about that, and AJ had a great question about it. So it's because it's so important to a startup. But for buying a practice, it's a less important. I still do it because I want to know what's in the area, what my ratios are, what my competition's doing, all that. But when you buy a business, if it's the right business to buy, we can get into that later. But if it's the right practice to buy, then the demographics aren't driving the reason why you're buying. The practice supports itself, the cash flow's happening. You would look and you would make sure that it fits your lifestyle. And so you don't have to grow it on a 30% over year. You could just grow it by 5-10%, stabilize the practice, and it'll be beautiful. So demographics aren't as important, but once you find that right practice and you want to make a move on it, sending a letter of intent is the first step kind of process. And it's a very, quite frankly, it's kind of casual. I don't want to make it too casual here. It's a formal handshake. It's dating. I always say, like, They're dating. It's kind of like being on a dating app and you're just swiping right and left, I suppose. I've never done it. But this is kind of like you swipe right and left, you're looking at the practices, right? And then you find one you're interested and you write an LOI. Now you're casually dating. You're not committed. You're going on some dates. You found each other. It's a little handshake, but this is the offer you're making. I help with that. I value the businesses. I negotiate. We send the offer to the practice brokers. That's step one. Step two now is if we get into a contract, so we've sent our offer and they signed it, it still can blow up. It's still non-binding, is what we say in the industry. It's not binding. But we are verbally and handshake and documented that we're now in a committed relationship, right? So now we're not looking for practices anymore. We're not swiping left and right. We're done looking. We're fully intended in buying this thing if it works out. So this is kind of due diligence process. You go through a chart audit, you go through professional review, usually me, CPA of some sort. I'm sure AJ has some of those resources too. But you're looking at the business, you're looking at the cash flow to see if it can support you. You're officially securing lending, and you're getting the lending part and buttoned up. Once you get kind of that evaluation and due diligence, kind of end of that process of phase two, that's when you want to hire a legal team and potentially a CPA if you don't have someone like me on your team looking at the financials. AJ, do you guys do some of that financial reviews for your clients? I assume so.
Yeah. So on the financials, typically, valuation to be done, and we'll have CPAs that you can go out and interview, and they'll quote you a fee to do that valuation. And then once you get that valuation, if you have questions on it, we're always there to give it a second opinion as well. And so
Yep.
this goes back to, if you're going to buy a practice, you're going to spend money. Okay. And you're going to build out your team, and don't be afraid to spend a couple bucks if that advice you're going to get is worthwhile.
That's right. So, and I'll comment, the industry is changing a little bit. So this idea of a buyer representative or a buyer advocate is a newer concept to the industry. CPAs are great. They do valuations. I'm valuation trained, but I'm not just looking at the financials. That's what CPAs do. I look at the fees. I look at the hygiene department. I'm looking at dental codes. I'm looking at collection ratios. I'm looking at new patients. I'm looking at demographics. So I think financials in this part of phase two, I think your due diligence has to go well above just, hey, this business makes 300 grand, because the greatest risk is that you can't maintain what the seller's doing from an operational perspective. So you got to dig in, you got to really look at the practice and see how it's doing. The financials is like a picture, and you can't see the behind the scenes of the picture. You can just see a picture, and that's how I would describe kind of financials. AJ, sorry I cut you off there.
Yeah, and then what I was going to add to that is, especially if you've never worked in this practice, we have a lot of clients that practice, or they go back on my desk. You know what that practice is capable of going on, but if you're buying a practice sight unseen, absolutely, you want a 360 view of that practice.
That's right. So it's just to sum up that phase two. This is like about to start the conversation of getting married. So this is where it's getting real. You go from casual dating to, hey, you cool if we go exclusive, to we're about to get married. So this is the place. This phase two of due diligence is where everything, you look under the hood, you get to see everything. So you want to know for sure that you're moving forward at the end of this. Otherwise, you got to break up, right? This is the conversation. Do you want kids or not? And if you don't want kids and I want kids, it's a deal breaker, right? So the next phase, of course, is preparing for the transition. So now we know we're in it. Like, due diligence is done. We're good with the price. Now it's just locking up the purchase and sale agreement with your attorney. That's moving, getting your lease dialed in. But now you got to literally, close, as we call it, get your credentialing done. We do credentialing. It's a side service. You don't have to hire us for buyer rep or consulting. We could just do credentialing and fee negotiation. So you got to get that dialed in. That can take literally 6 months in some cases with certain or carriers rather. And this is a fun conversation. You could spend an hour on this topic, how to get into network, mirror the seller, or negotiate. Can't do both. You can, but it just drags it out. So the more negotiations you want to do, the longer it takes. Well, the issue with that is if you're not credentialed within 2, 3, 4, 5 months after you buy, you're now telling patients you're out of network. So that's an example of how crazy this process of close can be. And so essentially, this is not due diligence. This is getting ready for close, credentialing, get your personal insurances, your lease. AJ, any comments on personal insurance? That's your whole world. I don't want to step on your toes there.
Yeah, coming out of school, you're going to carry a personal disability policy. Every year I get someone who reaches, and I say this with a long voice. Yeah, I get someone, AJ, I never bought it in dental school with the discount. I need it. I'm buying a practice. Like, have two sets of insurances. You have your personal insurance and you have your business insurances. Okay. Personal insurance is your disability insurance, life insurance, needs to be buttoned up. Buy a practice, and you typically want to increase that benefit before you buy that practice, because you're going to be able to go off your tax returns when you were a W-2. Okay. Buy that practice, might have to wait a little bit to bump up your policy benefit until you file a tax return as a business owner. The second thing is the business insurances. I don't sell malpractice. I don't sell, owner insurance. We have partners that do. And there's, 6 key insurances, comp insurance. You might look at cybersecurity. That's a big thing. Areas where it's like buying insurance. It sucks. Okay. I think in your mind, it's a waste of money. But at the end of the day, it's the cost of doing business, because you have now an asset that you need to protect. So it's my
I love that. I'm sure you have whole discussions in your directory there on this topic. So
yes,
out.
See, that's how bad of a salesman I guess I am. So we we get this in our library. There's a whole webinar on disability insurance and malpractice insurance to kind of through the nuts and bolts of that, so you can start to understand that. Absolutely.
Beautiful.
Yep.
That is an hour in it itself. But I will say, I think a lot of clients underinsure themselves because it's not a fun expense. Like AJ said, it's a cost of doing business. And guys, I get calls today, passing away, disability. AJ gets it all the time. Stuff happens, and it literally happens. And now you've got this business that your wife or husband has to deal with. And trust me, get your stuff in order, do it right. Don't be cheap about this, because I hope you never have to, but just cover yourself. And so that's all I'll leave there. So now we're done. We've again found it, negotiated it, did our due diligence, hired our team, got all the things done, closed. So you're meeting the team, setting up payroll, onboarding the team, which is a whole webinar in itself. I'll say a few things. Collect your money. If you're buying ARs or working capital, I always advise buying ARs for a lot of reasons. Again, an entirely different topic, but you got to collect your money in that bullet point. And it's actually a very big problem. The number one lawsuit post-close is over AR disputes. So I say collect your money as if it's easy. You've got all this work that we billed for, and we deserve to collect that money. And in a transition, that gets weird. So having advisors like us to walk you through that would be awesome. And all of the miscellaneous stuff, transferring over business contracts, setting up the software, setting up merchant services. I mean, it's been an hour on phase 4, but transitioning just the right way. So that is an acquisition and a startup very quickly. I'm going to hit pros and cons really quick and tie this program up in a bow. Any last minute kind of things there on the processes of both of those options?
I just play to what your strong suits are, and bring in support where you're not, what it comes down to.
Beautiful. All right. Startups, pros. You picked it. We talked about a lot of this stuff, so this was just kind of highlights and probably quickly going through this. But for a startup, the pros are you pick the location, you pick the demographics. The financing terms, in my opinion, are incredible. Whereas acquisitions, it's pretty, the financing for startups is not atypical. It's awesome. You can get some incredible deals, graduated payments, long terms, no money down. It's incredible what you guys can get as dentists to do a startup. In my opinion, that's a huge benefit. Brand new facility, no issues. It's beautiful. It's brand new equipment. You all come out of school and you're used to working with the best of the best. not the case when you buy a practice. And I just can to tell you right now that that's one of the biggest things that my clients say, well, it doesn't have a cone beam. I can't do this or that. So guys, like, buying the business for the cash flow. You're not buying the business for a 15-year-old ADEC chair. Where startups, you get brand new everything. So it's exactly how you guys would want it. And then you get a strong marketing budget with startup if you're budgeting appropriately. So when you market, you get to attract the patients you want. When buying a practice, it's not the case. And then one of the other huge pros of a startup is, of course, you get to pick your team. Unfortunately, there isn't a lot of due diligence in the acquisition process where you get to actually interview the team to make sure you want those people. There's a lot of grouchy people out there, and you're going to rely on them post-close. So this is a pro of a startup. Okay, the biggest cons of a startup naturally is unpredictable cash flow. It's the scariest part. I am here to tell you, working with a professional like us, they're going to get you to break even within 6 months to 8 months, worst case. You should never be beyond 12 months and still trying to figure out how to break even. So break even, this is like all bills of this not huge, but this beautiful office and all that 9 to 12 month work that we talked about is now going to be covering itself in its expenses within 6 to 8 months. We shoot for 3 months. After that, everything else is on top of what you're currently earning as an associate. So it is a downside in startup. But if I told you that you could get there in 6 months and still make decent money at your associate job, and the bank will cover you during that 6 months with working capital, that sounds like you could do that, then startup's the way to go. But that is the biggest con, cash flow. Juggling multiple jobs, hard. You'll probably be doing that for maybe 12 to 18 months, but you got to do that to keep your cash flow and your family dialed in. AJ, I'm sure will back me up on that as a financial planner. New team, that's hard. Getting them, it's hard. It's actually a pro and a con. For the same reason you get to do the training, it's also hard if you've never done it. So setting expectations and setting up those SOPs, that's hard, right? Again, those systems, and just frankly, more decisions to be made. I think in general, that locks up the startup. AJ, anything on pros and cons of a startup that you want to touch on?
I would be remiss. So I'm going to talk about student loans here in a second, and
okay, good.
on me that it took me that long to get to it. But first, let's talk about getting to pick your team. Okay, this is part startup and acquisition. You need to understand that if you're doing an acquisition, you're taking over all the habits and everything, people that you have, good or bad. Okay. And is when you buy a business, if it's an acquisition not related to a startup, and even to a startup to a certain extent, your job is to build that trust and rapport with your new hires. And the best thing you can do is try and go as long as you can, let's say a month, 2 months, especially for an acquisition, without really telling them what to do and just asking questions on what their feedback is. And then you're going to allow them to really buy into what you're doing, and you're going to build that rapport with them as individuals. Okay. Let's talk about student loans real quick, and then I'll hand it back to Michael to finish up.
Please.
Your student loans, as you come out of dental school, I know the landscape, we're recording this in March 2025. It's wild in the student loan front. It's like World War III. Okay. But at this point, the government is going to outline, put into place whatever income-driven repayment plan they're going to come up with, so that when you graduate, you are going to be able to pick some type of income-driven repayment plan coming out of school. If you are going to buy a practice within a couple years coming out of school, we need to keep that required minimum payment on your student loans as low as possible. So when you go out and apply with the different banks, that your loan is not going to cause an issue from your debt to income ratio. Do not go out and refinance $400,000 in loans down to a 5-year term just because you could get a 5% rate and you're going to save money over time. Okay. Your practice to be prioritized, and you need to ensure that your student loans are simmering on the back burner. It's not like we're not paying them off, but they're simmering on the back burner until you buy that practice. Once you buy the practice, then with our clients, that's when we go out and we understand where your income is at and what your repayment plan is going to be, and if a refinance i.e. getting them out of the federal system, is going to be in the cards in the near future. Okay. I can't set it up. Do not mess them up to where it messes up your financing. So I'll turn it over to you, Michael, so you can wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I love it. Okay, acquisitions, cons, acquisitions, predictable cash flow. It's going to be opposite of startup, right? Predictable cash flow. Hopefully, if it's not predictable, it's probably not the right practice to buy. I like to see 3 years of just flat sales because it's predictable, right? If you see a practice that's just growing or dying, I want predictable cash flow, less training technically needed. You walk in, it should be somewhat of an engine. It might be a dysfunctional engine. The engine might not be running perfectly, but at least it's an engine, right? Where startup, there's no engine and you create every little system. In this practice was performing the way it performed. Again, there might be plenty of opportunity to fix. We love fixing. We're consultants, but it's not time to fix it. You walk in, you stabilize the patient, you stabilize the team, and then you can start working on fixing. So it's a pro that you don't have to go in from day one and start fixing things. So same systems established, decisions to make in general, and cash flow. Again, more cash flow. I put that in there because it's a pro on top and bottom all the way through. If the practice has no cash flow, by the way, maybe you shouldn't buy it. And maybe you should do a startup. A lot of folks approach me and say, I want to buy this practice that's throwing off 400 or 500 grand. What should I buy for it? What should we get it for? I don't like it. Those deals, those are my third favorite deals. I like acquisitions first that have good cash flow. The next thing I like is startups with the plan and approach. And then I like crappy acquisitions, fixer uppers.
Yeah.
That's, and any talks to you is going to give you that advice. Listen to it. I'll sidebar. My dad, right out of college, first job, I buy a house for my wife and I. It's a house in the middle of like this beautiful district in the area I wanted to be in. I knew my kids would love to be there, and it needed help. It needed a lot of work. And my dad, who flipped houses and built houses his whole career life, said, "You sure you want to do this? It's going to cost you more. You're going to spend a lot more time and stress. Are you sure?" I'm like, "Dad, it's going to be cheaper. Like, it's already great bones." He was so right. I didn't listen to him. You don't listen to your dad at that age. It costs so much more, and it was a crazy time in my life. And so this is that conversation for you guys. If you're looking for a sweet deal that you think you're going to be able to flip or turn into a gold mine, and they didn't, I am telling you, there's probably a reason the practice is not doing well. And who are you to think that you're, some tycoon to flip that around? So I'm going to end it on that, because the pro in acquisition is cash flow. If it doesn't have cash flow, it's a con, right? So remember that. All right, cons, big cons. Here, clinical philosophy. If you have a different clinical philosophy, you're going to struggle. All right. So, and then we talked about it. Clinical's on you. I'm going to push you and ask you questions, and I'm going to verify some things. Back to that due diligence process I was telling you about. We look at ratios, crown to filling ratios, exam to x-ray to cleaning and perio maintenance ratios. We're looking at all the ratios to see if they're conservative or aggressive or healthy or not healthy. And that's about it. I can't tell you if you're, aggressive or not aggressive, right? So remember that. So the next one, team resistant to change. I mean, AJ, you don't get to pick your team. And the biggest cons of an acquisition is meeting a team and they are just not on board with your vision. Then they're very resistant to change, the technology. The world changed since COVID. And it's only 5 years ago, guys. So like a lot changed technology wise. AI is going crazy right now. If this video lives forever, AI is going to dominate the world in 2-3 years. And it just already is heading that way. If your team's not on board to change, it's not going to work out. So that's a big thing, resistance to change. There's always lease challenges in acquisitions. I'm speaking really fast just to land this bird on time. but lease challenges, right? So where a startup, you get to negotiate and leverage up and try to work a really good deal for yourself because it's a brand new lease. Acquisition definitely can get some new lease things, nuances, but the expectation is for you to kind of assume lease. Buy. You're not going to walk into that lease and just negotiate the best deal ever. You're just not. That could be a whole presentation in itself. Cons, I say location because with a startup, you get to literally pick, I want to be here. Where acquisition, you're kind of chasing an established business and it might not be exactly where you want it to be. Cons, of course, old equipment. This is my number one gripe about acquisitions. The number one gripe should be it's not throwing off enough cash. But unfortunately, you guys are very programmed to think equipment and clinical. Stop worrying about the equipment so much. I'm just going to ask you to not get too crazy on the equipment. If the business throws off cash, you can go buy equipment. If the business doesn't make any money for you, you can't buy equipment. So start thinking cash flow instead of equipment. But I would say if you can't do your standard clinical, your care, your clinical work with the equipment that's there, that can and it can be a negotiating factor. But don't call me and say, Mike, we got to negotiate $50,000 off the price because they don't have the world's greatest cone beam and they don't have the new Align technology scanner. It's like that, guys. This all wish list. The business existed. That's in the business today. If you want that money, you can do it with that equipment. Now, again, there's extreme sets. And then the last con, of course, is inheriting bad HR. I get this a lot where the seller had a handshake deal with the hygienist, but then did this deal with the front office. That's illegal. Like you can't treat your employees differently. How did the seller get away with it? Well, because they've owned it for 30 years. And all those people trust the seller. All the team members trust the seller. They don't trust you. You just bought it. Now you've got to level it out. You got to follow the HR rules because unfortunately we live in a world where if you're treating people differently, that's an opportunity for them now. We got L&I issues. So inheriting bad HR is something that we see quite a bit. AJ, getting to the final approach here. How do you, any comments on acquisition here?
No, I mean, we talked about student loans, so I'm happy.
So essentially, I would just like to invite you guys to reach out to Michael or Paula. We're the owners of Next Level. The website to visit our podcast is dentalunscripted.com. Just go to it. We're on pretty much every station, whatever you want to call it, platform, Spotify, Apple Tunes, you name it. We're on all of them. And guys, all of this stuff is there, and have you as listeners. So AJ, thanks so much for the opportunity, my friend. Appreciate you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Michael. Tremendous information. And listen, don't be afraid about reaching out to Michael. We love it. Just having a conversation, education first, and then the business just naturally flows from there. So for those of you that are nearing graduation, if you haven't already, you need to schedule your consult. We're going to go over your student loans, strategize their career path, budget, especially if you're looking at biopractice. We'll talk about all the things we talked about today in the sense of how does that tie in financially. We're going to give you the best price that we can get you on your discounted disability insurance options, cut through a lot of the rats and what you're in right now, trying to figure out what's good. We're going to set some goals for you. Okay. So need to get the ball rolling on that. I think now is the good time. So you get this done and wrapped up before graduation. The discounts on your disability insurance, we got to get that in before graduation to lock that in. For those of you seeing the tax return piece there, if you haven't already, my disclaimers: consider filing your tax return for 2024. That's going to really set you up for success to minimize your student loan payment in that year based on the income-driven repayment plans. And then, we do a new grad onboarding meeting that's included when you become a client with us. So thanks so much, Michael. We appreciate you taking the time out of the day to join us. And for those of you listening, please reach out to us if you have any questions. Thank you.